So, AEW have a lot of really good factions right now, the likes of Team Taz and the rest, and people are really enjoying it because factions are deadly. Meanwhile, on Raw, they had the best faction in the world and split them up for no reason, and nobody seems to be really enjoying Raw. So, in this video, I'm going to see if I can write a 12-week storyline on Raw involving as many factions as possible to see if it makes things more interesting. Right, so week 1, yeah? Week 1 is a night of champions. Loads of different titles on the line. The main event is Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre for the WWE title. But before that, we start off with Shelton and Cedric in the ring. And they turn around and they say, MVP, I'm really sorry, can we rejoin the Hurt Business, please? And MVP shows up and he says, yes. So there we go. That's problem like A1 with Raw sorted, fixed in literally about a minute. So we're off to a good start. Then we have a United States title match, Sheamus versus Randy Orton. Sheamus retains. Then we have AJ and Omos against the Viking Raiders for the tag titles. AJ and Omos retain. Then Bray Wyatt comes down to the ring and he says, so I've seen a sports psychologist about The Fiend, and it turns out that The Fiend was just me projecting my insecurities on other people, and really there was no need for it. I am going to now focus on being a competitor and training properly and getting the big win. But I still want to fight Alexa Bliss next week. So that's a match set for next week. But for now, a women's tag title match, Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler versus Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke. Nia and Shayna retain. Then backstage, Miz and Morrison are in the change room, and John Morrison turns around and says, look, I know you hated my reality show idea. How about we build a faction? You, me, and other wrestlers whose names start with M. So it's depending on how many people are in the faction. Sure. Co-main event time, and it's Rhea Ripley versus Asuka for the Raw Women's Championship. But Charlotte is banned from ringside. There is no Charlotte here to ruin the match, and Rhea Ripley retains because of interference from Peyton Royce. And she turns around to Peyton Royce and she says, you don't work for WWE anymore, you work for me now. Then we go backstage. Angel Garza is there with his cousin Humberto Carrillo, and he says, Humberto, we have a match on main event. And Humberto's like, yeah, no, I can't wait, it's going to be good. No, this is bollocks. Like, we're two of the most underrated wrestlers in the company. Why don't we start a faction with, strength in numbers, and we can force people to put us on Raw and have actual proper matches and all that. Yeah, sure. Main event time. Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre for the title, yeah? And in the end, there is no result. The match gets thrown out because the Hurt Business come down and beat the shit out of Drew McIntyre. Just for the purposes of this video, T-Bar and Mace are in the Hurt Business. As of last week, I don't know if they're in it or not in it. I kind of hope they're not, to be honest. But just for the sake of this video, the Hurt Business are including T-Bar and Mace. They come in, they beat the shit out of Drew McIntyre. But then, who comes in for the save? Only none other than Jinder Mahal. He fucking destroys everyone. He stands there next to Drew McIntyre, backing him up, and they have a moment. And that's the end of week 1. Week 2, the main event for this is Bray Wyatt versus Alexa Bliss. But before we get to that, 3MB are in the ring. They announced that because Heath Slater is in Impact, they're going to be hosting auditions next week to find out who the third member of the band is going to be. Then there's a triple threat tag match for the number 1 contendership of the Raw tag team titles. The Viking Raiders are meant to be in the match, but instead they appear on the screen and they say, we are here in the warehouse of Raw Underground. And we realise after our loss last week to AJ Styles and Omos that normal wrestling is boring and bullshit, and Raw Underground is very epic, and we're going to protest in the Raw Underground warehouse every week until management bring back Raw Underground. Goodbye. Bit odd, but the match happens anyway, and New Day and the Hurt Business are kind of cancelling each other out, getting the better of each other, focusing on each other, and in the end, Elias and Jackson Riker end up winning the number 1 contenders match, and MVP comes out and he says, look, New Day, Big E's not around, maybe you should consider joining the Hurt Business, because if you join the Hurt Business, we'd have won that match. Kofi and Xavier are kind of like, yeah, I don't know about that. I don't think so. Naomi and Lana are being interviewed backstage by none other than this beautiful Irish bastard, fucking Kevin Patrick. What a man. He is interviewing Naomi and Lana, who challenge Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. They say, look, you've beaten Mandy and Dana, you've beaten everyone you need to beat. Come here and beat us then. So that's the match set for next week. But a match that happens now, Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke versus Nikki Cross and Mickie James. And in the match, out of nowhere, who shows up on the fucking stage? None other than Miz and Morrison. And they say, oh, this is a really good match. I'm a really big fan of Mandy Rose. Or should I say, Mandy Rose? And then out of nowhere, Mandy Rose just punches Dana Brooke square in the face, completely betrays her, and then John Morrison's like, and should I say, Mickey James? And then Mickey James turns around to Nikki Cross and says, I'm going to join this new faction if that's okay with you. And Nikki Cross is like, yeah, that's no problem, have fun. Now, has gotten even bigger. There's 4 members. Then there's another women's tag match as Rhea Ripley and Peyton Royce take on Charlotte and Asuka in a tag match. Except, Asuka never shows up. Charlotte's there left on her own against Rhea Ripley and Peyton. Asuka's nowhere to be found. They stare at the stage. The music's there, it's playing, but nobody's coming out. In the end, Rhea Ripley and Peyton Royce beat Charlotte in the handicap match, and we move on to the next segment, which takes us backstage, where the main event mafia, Angel Garza and Humberto Carrillo, are talking to Ricochet, and they say, Ricochet, do you want to join our gang? It's going to be pretty sick. And Ricochet says, yes. So the main event mafia grows even bigger. In the co-main event, Sheamus defends his United States title against Braun Strowman successfully, and then after the match, MVP comes out and says, Sheamus, I don't really like you, but you've got gold, you're quite good at defending the gold, would you like to join the Hurt? Yes. Sheamus doesn't even hesitate, he's in, new Hurt Business member, let's go. Main event, Bray Wyatt versus Alexa Bliss, and the winner is Alexa Bliss, by interference from none other than Blake and Murphy. The band are back together, and I know what you're thinking, Cian, did you finish writing this video the day before everyone got released? Yes. Week 3. The main event is Naomi and Lana versus Baszler and Nia Jax for the tag titles, but first, 3MB have their auditions to find their 3rd member, so that's what we're opening the show with. Hey, I'm Randy Orton, always wanted to be in 3MB, really looking forward to this. Oh, hi Randy, just relax, calm down and try your best. Next.
Granite Xhaka, score a goal, win the game for Arsenal, win the game for...
Next.
Take me to your Xbox to play Fortnite today. You can check me Wasty Mire, but not Loot Lake.
Next. Oh, fucking hell. Alright, Omos, off you go.
I dreamed a dream in time gone by.
That's beautiful. Oh my, you're in, Omos. You're the 3rd member. But then we cut to Bray Wyatt backstage, and he's in the hallway with Braun Strowman, and he says, look, Braun, I've just lost to Alexa Bliss. You've just lost to Sheamus. How about we get the band back together? And Braun says, you know what? This means the absolute world to me. Ever since we split up, I've really don't care, didn't ask. Are you joining or are you not joining? Yeah. Then the main event mafia are backstage, and they go up to Mustafa Ali and they say, do you want to join our gang? And Mustafa Ali's like, yeah, that sounds deadly. Then Charlotte is running around backstage, and she's looking everywhere for Asuka, who obviously abandoned her last week. And she runs out into the car park, and she finds a load of people gathered around like, oh, have you seen Jeff Hardy? We can't find him anywhere. And she's like, no, I haven't seen Jeff Hardy anywhere. And then she runs back in, bumps into Rhea Ripley, and there's a match set for next week. Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte. Mandy Rose then takes on Dana Brooke after betraying her last week, and she absolutely batters her, killer, and they now sort of establish themselves as a dominant faction, and Dana Brooke is completely out of the equation. AJ Styles comes to the ring after that match, and he says, Omos, this is bollocks, right? How the fuck, you can't just join 3MB, we're in the middle of some very important business, we're the tag champions, what the fuck are you doing? And Omos is just like, look, it's an extracurricular activity to improve my musical abilities. And AJ's like, no, this is bollocks. You can't just fucking go out there and join other teams when you're teaming with me. And he says, look, if you don't want to support my musical endeavours, that's fine. We'll vacate the titles and we'll go our separate ways. So they do. And now the number 1 contenders are the champions. So Elias and Jackson Riker are the tag team champions. And then we go backstage. MVP walks up to New Day, yeah? He shows them a video. And the video is a video that he purchased earlier that day. It's a cameo of Big E, where he gave Big E a script that says, Kofi and Xavier, please join the Hurt Business. This is not a cameo paid for by MVP, and please do not contact me to see if this is legitimate. So after seeing that, they were like, oh, well, you know what? If Big E tells us to join the Hurt Business, then who are we to say no? So they join the Hurt Business, and then it's time for the main event. Naomi and Lana versus Shayna and Nia Jax. And with the help of Reginald, Shayna and Nia Jax retain the women's tag titles. Week 4. The show opens with Drew McIntyre in the ring, and he says, Bobby Lashley, I have my backup now, you have your backup. How about we fuck this interference and we just have a match 1-on-1 for the title at Backlash this Sunday? And Bobby Lashley says yes. The main event Mafia are backstage and they say, Drew Gulak, do you want to join our gang? And he says yes. Then we have our women's title match, Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte, except Charlotte doesn't show up and Rhea Ripley is fucking raging. She was looking forward to this fight, so she turns around to Peyton. She's like, what the fuck are you doing? And Peyton's like, this has nothing to do with me. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. That's the end of that. There's no match. Naomi shows up and she challenges Lana. She says, Lana, look, we're shite. I don't want a team anymore. Can we just fight each other instead at Backlash? Lana says yes. In the co-main event, the Lucha House Party take on the Hurt Business, and the match is going alright, but then Miz and Morrison show up on stage and they say, hey, we're really big fans of both of these teams, especially the Lucha House Party. Lince Dorado and Gran Metalik, or should we say Gran Metalik? Gran Metalik betrays Lince Dorado and he joins, or should I say, because there's more members now. Nia and Shayna show up and they say, look, Elias, Jackson Riker, the women's tag division shite, we've wiped them all out. We want your belts now instead. So that's the match at Backlash. Nia and Shayna versus Elias and Riker. They're unifying the titles, whoever wins. And in the main event, Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman take on Blake and Murphy. And Blake and Murphy win. Backlash, right? It opens up with Naomi versus Lana. Naomi absolutely kills Lana. And then MVP comes out and says, do you want to join the Hurt Business? And she says, yes. Then we have Gran Metalik taking on his former partner Lince Dorado. Gran Metalik beats him decisively, perhaps a bit of help from After the match, the main event Mafia come out and they say, hey Lince, would you like to join our gang? And he says, yes. Slapjack and Reckoning are in. They're backstage with MVP and they say, hey MVP, we know it's T-Bar and Mace are in the Hurt Business. Can we join the Hurt Business? No. Rhea and Peyton come out and they say, look, we're going for those titles. Whoever wins between Elias and Jackson Riker or Shayna and Nia, we're coming for those titles next Monday on Raw. Then backstage, MVP goes up to R-Truth and says, R-Truth, you're a legend, you have gold, do you want to join the Hurt Business? He says yes. In our co-main event for all the tag titles, Shayna and Nia, accompanied by Reginald, they beat Elias and Jackson Riker. They walk out with all the gold. Elias and Jackson are devastated, they're at their absolute lowest point. And who comes out? Only none other than Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman. And they're like, perhaps it's time to grow a family of sorts. Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley for the title. There's no interference. Bobby Lashley wins cleanly. MVP comes out after the match and he says, look, Drew, you may have lost, but I'm a big fan of all three of you. How would 3MB like to be the official band of the Hurt Business? And before McIntyre can say anything, Omos completely cuts across him and goes, yeah, that sounds amazing. So 3MB join the Hurt Business. Week 5, and the show opens with the Wyatts, and they challenge Blake and Murphy to a rematch. This time there's 4 of them. There's 3 of Blake and Murphy and Alexa, and they say, look, find a partner by the end of the night and we're fighting. MVP comes out and he says, look, none of the Hurt Business are here. They're all out celebrating, having a laugh after Backlash. Damian Priest, you're an excellent talent. I want you to join the Hurt Business. You haven't been answering my phone calls, but I'd appreciate if by next week you showed up and you gave me an answer. Then Mace and T-Bar face off against their former tag partners Slapjack and Reckoning, and this is a match to determine whether Slapjack and Reckoning are fit to join the Hurt Business or not. And they fail. Mace and T-Bar win. Slapjack and Reckoning are distraught in the ring after the fight. They're like, oh bollocks, what the fuck do we do now? When out of nowhere, Angel Garza and the main event Mafia come out and they say, hey, Slapjack and Reckoning, would you like to join our gang? And they say yes. But one member of the main event Mafia who wasn't there was Mustafa Ali. He was late to the arena that day. He was getting his gear on when everyone went out to the ring, so he was backstage. He wasn't ready. And while he was backstage on his own, he got approached by The Miz. And The Miz says, hey, Mustafa Ali, or Mustafa Ali, I'd really like you to join our faction instead. And Mustafa Ali says, look, I'll think about it. Just give me time to think about it and I'll give you an answer in the coming weeks. Then we get the match that was advertised earlier in the night, Blake and Murphy against the Wyatts, and Blake and Murphy's surprise partner, Nikki Cross. The winner of this match ends up being the Wyatts because Nikki Cross actually betrays her team and joins the Wyatts. Then we get to the main event, all the gold on the line, Rhea Ripley and Peyton Royce against Shayna and Nia, and this time Reginald isn't there, he didn't show up with them, and Nia Jax is worried. She's looking behind, looking at the Titantron like, is Reginald going to come out? Is he here? Is he alright? In the end, she leaves Shayna Baszler on her own to go over and check on Reginald, and Shayna has to defend all the titles against Rhea and Peyton in a handicap match. She's not able to do it, and Rhea and Peyton are now the new champions. Week 6. It starts with the Wyatts in the ring, and Bray Wyatt says, look, this should come as no surprise. We take people who are at the bottom, we work together, and with strength in numbers, we bring each other all the way up to the top. We're a family. And I would now like to introduce our newest member of the family, somebody who has completely lost their way, somebody who's at the bottom after being near the top, Tucker. And yes, I may have written this before he got released, but this still makes sense, so I'm going to pretend I meant it. Blake, Murphy and Alexa are then being interviewed by the Irish icon that is Kevin Patrick. They say, look, we're devastated about the loss last week, but we're still a faction, we're still a team, and we can still get the job done at the end of the day, and you're going to see that tonight when we take on, Shayna Baszler then comes out and she's like, Nia Jax, you completely fucked me over and we lost our titles because you went to check on Reginald. Fuck off, I'm fighting you next week. Rhea Ripley then challenges R-Truth for the 24/7 title, and she wins because of interference from Peyton Royce. Then backstage, Akira Tozawa approaches the main event Mafia and he says, I would like to join your gang, please. And they're kind of like, you've got the worst win-loss record in the company, and he's like, go on, and my ninja can join too. He's really good, and we'll win loads of matches together. And they say, fuck it, fine. Then MVP comes out, and he's like, right, Damian Priest, I've given you a week. It's now time to hear your answer. What is it? Damian Priest doesn't come out. Alright, Damian Priest, you've made the worst mistake of your fucking life. Main event, Blake, Murphy, and Alexa versus, and of course, at ringside is Miz and Morrison, and Miz grabs the mic during the match and he says, you know what, I don't hate Blake, Murphy and Alexa, I actually quite respect this trio. Alexa, Blake and Murphy, or should I say, Murphy. And Murphy betrays his team and he joins, Week 7, and the big main event, the main segment of the show that goes on last, is a concert. 3MB's first official concert in front of the Thunderdome. But first, Shayna Baszler versus Nia Jax. Shayna Baszler kills Nia Jax, just kills her stone dead. And after the match, MVP comes out and he says, Shayna Baszler, would you like to join the Hurt Business? And Shayna says, yes, absolutely. Then Mustafa Ali shows up and he says to The Miz, look, I saw what you did last week with Murphy and I don't like betrayals, I don't like the way you do business. I'm going to have to turn down my offer to join. And The Miz says, you know what, Mustafa, that's okay. I respect your decision. It's then time for Rhea Ripley versus Sheamus for the United States title. And again, because of interference from Peyton Royce, Rhea Ripley beats Sheamus and builds the belt collection even further. And she's one step closer to becoming like the Ultimo Dragon. Then MVP comes out and he says, would you like to join the Hurt Business, Peyton? And Rhea's like, what the fuck? I'm the champion. And then MVP's like, no, you're only the champion because Peyton Royce is doing all the work. She's the strategist. She's the brains behind the operation. We're not interested in you. We want Peyton Royce in the Hurt Business. And she turns around and she's like, no, she's not joining. Fuck off. Then we get the dream match. Wesley Blake versus Buddy Murphy. But in the middle of the match, Alexa Bliss runs down in absolute tears. She's crying, bawling her eyes out, and Wesley Blake is like, what the fuck? And Alexa's just screaming. She's like, I can't believe you would do this to me, Blake. And she has a note in her hand. She lifts up the note, the camera zooms in, and the note just says, Alexa is a big massive dum-dum and I do not like her. Signed, Wesley Blake. And Wesley like, that wasn't me, that wasn't my note. I swear to God, that's forged. Buddy Murphy capitalized on distraction, beats Wesley Blake, but after the match, Wesley Blake just runs down backstage. He's trying to find Alexa Bliss. He's running everywhere, but he can't find her anywhere. No idea where she is. In the final segment of the show, we have our 3MB concert. Very exciting stuff. They're playing loads of songs for the fans at home, for the Thunderdome. Everyone's enjoying it. But then out comes Miz and Morrison of and they say, this is a great concert, 3MB, really enjoying it. McIntyre, Mahal, or should I say McIntyre and Mahal and Omos. And I hate to say this, it hurts my heart to actually have written this, but Drew McIntyre and Jinder Mahal beat the shit out of Omos. They absolutely destroy him. They join, they want nothing to do with the Hurt Business. Week 8, and the main running theme of this show is that the Hurt Business are on their way. Their vacation is over, their holiday is finished, they are coming back to take care of business. And you see them throughout the show, traveling down in their cars, their planes, however it is they're getting to the building. And that's basically how it sort of builds to the final segment. But the first segment is Mustafa Ali in the car park after getting the shit kicked out of him by They turn around, they say, how fucking dare you betray us and turn us down? You are in no position to turn us down, you stupid, stupid man. The next match, Rhea Ripley and Peyton Royce against Ziggler and Rude for all, again, more gold on the line. Champion versus champions, title versus title. Peyton Royce pins Dolph Ziggler for the win. After the match, out comes Randy Orton. He RKO's Peyton Royce out of nowhere. Rhea Ripley makes a run for it. Backstage, Wesley Blake is in a heap. Just when things started to turn around, he got the band back together, things were looking on the up, he's back to square one, he's devastated when all of a sudden a hand appears on his shoulder. The camera zooms out, and it's Bray Wyatt. Then Randy Orton's getting interviewed by the one and only Kevin Patrick, and he says, I've been barely used this past 2 months, it's bullshit. Rhea Ripley, you've got all the gold, I want all the gold, we are fighting at Judgment Day. So that's a match set for this Sunday. And then finally, in the last segment of the show, the Hurt Business finally arrived. They say, if you fuck with one of us, you fuck with all of us. What you did to Omos was a fucking disgrace. This Sunday at Judgment Day, we've got a challenge to put out. Excluding me, there are 12 of us and there's 8 of you. Whatever you want to do to make up the numbers, you do what you have to do. The Hurt Business versus one fall to a finish. The losing team leaves Raw forever. So that's our card for Judgment Day, set and ready to go. It's not brand exclusive, so most of the matches are from SmackDown, but the best matches are from Raw. The first of these matches is Rhea Ripley versus Randy Orton, but Randy Orton doesn't show up, and again, Rhea Ripley is raging. She's like, Peyton Royce, what the fuck is this? But there's nothing she can do about it. There's no match, so we're just going to move on to the main event. The main event, the Hurt Business versus The first issue is, how does make up the numbers? And basically they allow the Hurt Business to make their entrance first, and then they come out by themselves and they say, I'm actually quite a big fan of the Hurt Business. Well, certain members, maybe Mace, for example, and then John Morrison's like, and T-Bar, and then basically, Mace and T-Bar betray the Hurt Business and they join So now it's 10 versus 10. The Hurt Business weren't prepared for the betrayal at all. They look like they're in a serious amount of trouble. They don't know what the fuck to do. When all of a sudden, who shows up as backup? The Main Event Mafia, because attacked Mustafa Ali the previous Monday, and they said, if you fuck with one of us, you fuck with all of us. They beat the shit out of and the Hurt Business get the win. And the celebrations, everyone's happy. The Miz, Morrison and his gang are all gone, but then the lights go out, and when they come back on, it's the Wyatt family, and everyone else is fucked. Week 9, the Main Event Mafia come out and confront Rhea Ripley in the ring, and they say, Rhea, you can't just collect all the belts, you have to actually defend them. And she's like, yeah, fine, I'll fight any one of you, not all of you though, so have a match amongst yourselves to determine who should fight me for one of my belts. So that happens later on in the night, but first, Omos comes out and he's like, AJ Styles, you haven't answered any of my phone calls, I haven't seen you in weeks, I'm just coming out here to apologise, and if you want to be friends again, do let me know and we can team up again, and I'll ask MVP if you can join the Hurt Business. AJ Styles doesn't come out, he's not really expected to come out, he hasn't been seen backstage in a while, but yeah. Then it's the Scramble match, the Main Event Mafia Scramble match to determine who gets to fight Rhea Ripley for her title. The match in the end is won by Akira Tozawa, the wrestler with the worst win-loss record in all of WWE right now. And even though this is the main event, it's not the final segment, because in the final segment, the Wyatts come out and they say, look, there's 7 of us, Hurt Business, you give us your best 7, 7 versus 7, same deal as Judgment Day. The losing team, one fall to a finish, leaves Monday Night Raw forever. Week 10. And it's Riddick Moss versus Reckoning, a match that would seem fairly insignificant otherwise. But as Riddick Moss looks like he's going to get the win, something flies out of his trunks. Nobody knows what it is. They look like gloves. He continues to wrestle and he gets the win over Reckoning, but it turns out that the gloves were AJ Styles gloves, and everyone realizes it as he's wrestling. So he grabs the gloves and runs on out of the arena. Rhea Ripley then comes out and she is in bits laughing. She's like, Akira fucking Tozawa. I won't just put one of my titles on the line against Akira Tozawa. I'll put all my titles on the line. Let's go. Next week, you versus me. This is going to be hilarious. Then in the main event, the Hurt Business versus the Wyatt family. Loser leaves Raw forever. The Hurt Business win. They're just, I mean, like, maybe if they had Harper and Rowan, they could get the job done. But this iteration of the Wyatt family, like, come on. Elias, Jackson Riker, they're not beating the Hurt Business. So that's how that ends. Week 11, Omos storms out to the ring and he's like, Riddick Moss, I know you know where AJ Styles is. His gloves literally fell out of your trunks. What the fuck? Where is he? And Riddick Moss comes out and he's like, Omos, I actually do know where AJ Styles is. He's up your ma's arse, and then just runs away. He runs out off the stage, backstage, down the hall, but as he's running away, he is caught by none other than Titus O'Neil, and Titus O'Neil throws him into a janitor's closet, locks the door, handcuffs him to the door, and he says, "Don't worry lads, I'll interrogate him, I'll get the answers we need." Then we get Rhea Ripley versus Akira Tozawa for all of Rhea Ripley's belts. And holy shit, Akira Tozawa looks like he's about to win. He's doing everything right. He's taking this more seriously than he's taken any match ever in his life. When all of a sudden, who interferes? Only none other than Australia. Tony Storm, Bronson Reed, Brendan Vink, Nathan Jones, all the boys are all there. The main event Mafia try and salvage the match for Akira Tozawa, but they get destroyed. The only person who doesn't interfere is Akira Tozawa's ninja. And the Australians see the ninja and they're just laughing. They're like, "What are you going to do? You've got no chance against us. This is gas. We're about to beat the shit out of Akira Tozawa." When all of a sudden the ninja unmasks and it's Samoa Joe. Again, we're just gonna pretend that he wasn't released, and he just wipes out the Australians. I don't mean he wipes out the Australians. He kills the Australians, rips their fucking heads off with the sword, and the match is over. Rhea Ripley and Peyton Royce have run the fuck away. Like it's like they've sprinted out of there. They survive, and Joe is not a very happy man. But just before the show ends, we get a shot of backstage at the janitor's closet, where Titus O'Neil is on the floor right outside the janitor's closet, and Riddick Moss is nowhere to be found. Week 12. Samoa Joe comes out and he says, "We're going to be doing this again. Akira Tozawa versus Rhea Ripley for all the belts. This will be happening again. But this time, if anyone interferes, you have a warning. I will take their fucking head off and I will end their life." It cuts backstage to Rhea Ripley and Peyton Royce in the locker room, and Rhea Ripley says to Peyton, "Look, you may have to make the ultimate sacrifice here. Your job is to ensure that I remain champion for as long as possible with as many belts as possible. So if you have to do what you have to do, you have to do it." But then we get to the main segment of the show, the final segment. The Hurt Business come out and they say, "If you've upset one of us, you've upset all of us." And Omos is very upset. We're fortunate enough to have gotten into contact with Titus O'Neil. His video will be on screen in a minute. He's going to give us an update as to where Riddick Moss might be. And Riddick Moss, if Titus O'Neil knows where you are and he tells us, you are fucked. Titus O'Neil appears on screen and he says, "Lads, I know exactly where Riddick Moss is. He's right next to me, because we're mates." You know who else we're mates with? The Viking Raiders. And we're in the Raw Underground warehouse. For the last few months, none of us have been used. This is shite. Raw Underground was way better. We were massive stars in Raw Underground, and we're joining the protest because we want it back. And the Hurt Business used to own Raw Underground, so we were hoping that you might help us out. But obviously, nobody cares about Titus O'Neil, Riddick Moss, the Viking Raiders, so we've had to do what we've had to do to get everybody's attention. So, remember when Asuka went missing before the tag team match? She's here. Remember everybody was looking for Jeff Hardy in the car park? He's here. Remember Charlotte didn't show up for a match against Rhea Ripley? She's here. Remember Reginald wasn't there to help Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler? Because he's here. When Damian Priest ignored his invitation to join the Hurt Business, he was here. Remember when Wesley Blake couldn't find Alexa Bliss when she went running off? That's because she's here. When Randy Orton didn't show up at Judgment Day, it's because he was here. And Omos, your best pal AJ Styles, who you left behind to join 3MB, he's here. And I know what you might be thinking. Kian, did you steal this idea off The Walking Dead? Yes. Anyway, the moral of the story is anybody who didn't have a faction, anyone who didn't side with a team, got killed. I know that's probably a bit extreme, and yeah, most wrestlers might refuse to do the decapitation spot because it seems to result in instant death all the time for some reason, but we'll worry about that later. The story's already been written and that's the main thing. We're going to keep going. The Hurt Business are raging. Titus O'Neil makes the challenge. He's like, "Right, you bring your army, we have our army, we have it Raw Underground rules. The winning team of this fight next week on Raw, the Final Underground, gets to have it their way. If the Hurt Business win, the Raw Underground team are gone forever. And if the Raw Underground team wins, Raw in general is gone forever, and we go Raw Underground every single week until the end of time." The Hurt Business accept, and now we enter our final show of the story. Raw, Week 13, the Final Underground. The first match is Rhea Ripley versus Akira Tozawa for all of Rhea Ripley's belts. Peyton Royce does not interfere for fear that Joe would take her head off with the sword. So Akira Tozawa pulls off the upset, wins all the belts, and Peyton Royce comes out afterwards to comfort Rhea Ripley, and Rhea Ripley is raging. She lost all her belts, and she turns to Peyton Royce and says,
"You fucking idiot, Jeremy! You total fucking idiot! That was your job, you fucking moron! You cretin! You're a fuckhead! That's what you are! A fucking shithead!"
Out of nowhere, she's decapitated, but not by Samoa Joe, by none other than Billie Kay. The Iconics are back, they're reunited, and Akira Tozawa has all the belts. In our main event, it's the Hurt Business versus Raw Underground. The 4 lads show up first, then the Hurt Business show up, then Raw Underground show their backup, which is anyone that's been on Raw Underground in the past: Dolph Ziggler, Shane McMahon, Dabba-Kato, Arturo Huas, and a load of people that want to be on Raw Underground and want Raw Underground to be the way that it is today. So there's just loads of them, right? Loads of MMA fighters, blood sporty type people, whoever they can get their hands on. The army's massive, right? They then turn to Omos and like, Omos, you were a part of Raw Underground, why don't you join us? And he's like, no, he's never let me fight. I was security, it was shite. I want to be in the Hurt Business. So the Hurt Business, they're about to scrap, they're wildly outnumbered when all of a sudden, who shows up to back up the Hurt Business? None other than the Main Event Mafia. They go at it in the final fight of this whole story, and the Hurt Business win, thanks to interference from Peyton Royce and Billie Kay. MVP turns around and he says, look, Iconics, you can join the Hurt Business if you want. Main Event Mafia, you can join the Hurt Business if you want. So everybody joins the Hurt Business, everybody's now on the same faction, so there's no more need to fight each other, and everybody just sits around listening to MVP tell stories on Raw every week until climate change inevitably destroys the planet. That's the end of the story. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I put a lot of effort into this. I feel like I've touched on every single part of Raw, addressed every single part of Raw, and oh fuck, I forgot about Keith Lee.